Hey guys, today we are going to recap a comedy crime film, Masterminds, released in the year 2016. This movie is inspired by true events from the October 1997 Loomis Fargo robbery. In 1997, an armored car driver, David Gant, gets involved in a heist planned by a former colleague, Kelly Campbell, and a petty thief, Steve Eugene Chambers. Kelly chose David to be their inside man in Loomis because, despite being engaged, David is head over heels for Kelly, and she plans to take advantage of those unrequited feelings. He also happens to be one of the non-managers who has a key to the Loomis vault, which is an incredible advantage for this heist. This plan starts when the two get inspired by Philip Noel Johnson, a security guard who managed to steal $18.8 million from Loomis Fargo and Company, David's company, and Kelly's former workplace. After his initial reluctance, David agrees to be part of the plan after hearing Kelly's proposal to join him in fleeing to Mexico after the robbery. Under Kelly's supervision, David starts to train in his preparation for the robbery. However, most of it is rather awkward due to his clumsy nature, and it's as if he didn't train at all. He also keeps it a secret from his fiancée at the time, who he doesn't like very much. After a couple of weeks, the day finally comes for them to proceed with their plan. Steve, who is keeping his identity unknown to David, gives him a pistol just in case he needs to defend himself. David, with his key, enters the vault and loads his van with all the money that he can get. The plan almost fails when one of his colleagues, Ty, comes back into the office and catches him inside. However, due to his good and clumsy reputation, Ty doesn't suspect him and leaves the office. After 2 long hours of loading the van, David successfully gets the entire supply of the vault and the security cameras, except for the one currently recording him at that time. The next day, with $20,000, a fake ID, and a new identity as Michael McKinney, David flies to Mexico alone, in the hopes that Kelly will follow him there. Kelly, on the other hand, has no plans to follow him, as she really doesn't have any feelings for the man. Steve takes most of the money and nearly faints in joy when he realizes that they have $17 million in cash. He also starts to spend it like crazy, up to the point that he buys a mansion and land with the money he laundered, completely disregarding the serious consequences of authorities having him on their watch. Back at the Loomis vault, 2 FBI agents led by FBI Special Agent Scanklin takes on the case. Since David left a security tape behind, he immediately becomes the prime suspect in the case, and his face gets broadcasted on the national news. Unknown to this, David is having the time of his life in Mexico. Steve, on the other hand, plans to cut him from the team and turn him into the local authorities. Despite being reluctant at first because she felt guilty, Kelly eventually agrees because she could not be in this mess with David. With this tip, 3 Interpol officers go to the hotel where he's staying. Despite being caught off guard, David manages to evade them, but is left with no cash on hand. He calls Kelly, who is just as surprised as Steve, when they realize that he was not caught by the police. She also gets surprised when David accidentally finds out Steve's real identity, which puts Steve's plan to turn him into the police in jeopardy. Kelly manages to lie to David, who is still hoping for her to come with him to Mexico and is unaware of Steve's plan to cut him off. After hearing this, Steve hires his friend, the real Michael McKinney, to put a hit on David. Kelly tries to warn him by calling the hotel receptionist, but the message fails to reach David, who has no clue that someone is out there to eliminate him. Michael successfully finds David and immediately tries to pursue him in the local streets of Mexico, which, once again, David successfully evades. David immediately calls Kelly about it and discovers Steve's intention to eliminate him from the team and never send him the rest of his share of the money they got from the heist. Upon hearing this, he also questions Kelly's intentions with him and learns that she was never serious with him to begin with. This upsets David, so he cuts her off from his life. Due to his sorrow, he gets careless, making it easy for Michael to catch him. Since he's inside his place, unarmed, the hired hitman now has his life in the palm of his hand. While going through David's things, Michael's intentions change when he sees the fake ID and birth certificate, indicating that David is also a Michael McKinney. This prompted him to think that the two of them share the same fate. Since Michael thinks that their fates are intertwined for some cosmic reason, he throws away his mission to assassinate David, who then decides to play along to spare his life. The two start to become friends, and Michael even leaves him some spare cash. While all of this is happening, the FBI finally tracks Kelly Campbell, which results in her finally realizing that David holds a special place in her heart. Meanwhile, David finally starts to stand up for himself and even calls Steve to personally blackmail him and demand $6 million be transferred to a Mexican bank account. This terrifies Steve, especially when he thinks that David took Michael himself. After her newly discovered feelings for David, Kelly prepares for her trip to Mexico, but Steve's people abduct her so he can gain some advantage over David. Despite being upset with her initial manipulation, when David hears Kelly's plans to follow him, his heart softens, and he agrees to Steve's terms, which are to head to South America and wait for his manhunt to subside. He goes to the airport in no disguise or anything else, which prompts the guard to report him to the local authorities. While at the airport, David unexpectedly bumps into Michael, who is heading back to the United States of America for another job. After seeing that Michael's next target is Kelly, since her name is written on his palm, David convinces Michael not to kill her. After hearing that his target is his good friend's girlfriend, Michael agrees not to kill her, and the two switch tickets. With Michael's help, Steve was once again able to evade the Interpol agents and successfully land in America as a free man. While he's being pursued by both the federal agents and Steve's henchmen, David successfully reaches his house, where he is currently holding a housewarming party in his mansion. At the same time, the FBI are also onto Steve due to the crazy paper trail they've been leaving, which they think might be related to the Loomis robbery. Since all they need is a confession, they put a wire on Steve's rich neighbors in an attempt to get a confession from Steve. While this plan is taking place, Dave has a plan of his own and successfully sneaks inside the house while posing as another guest and rescues Kelly in a shed. While attempting to escape the party, Steve catches up to him and corners him in a nearby van. Upon seeing that the FBI undercover van is just behind them, he provokes Steve into confessing that he's the mastermind of the whole heist. As he's caught up in the moment, Steve confesses to being the mastermind, laundering money, and even sending a hitman to assassinate David in Mexico, all while the FBI agents are recording every word that he said. Because of this loud and clear confession, the agent finally has enough reason to arrest Steve, his henchman, Kelly, and lastly, David. After the trial, David is sentenced to 7 years in federal prison and promises to Kelly that they'll meet again after serving their sentences. He had a comfortable life in prison since everyone looked up to him as his robbery was, in fact, the second largest cash robbery at the time. His robbery also makes history as still being one of the biggest heists that ever happened on U.S. soil at the current time, making him an instant celebrity. On the other hand, Steve was sentenced to 11 years in prison and is now the owner of a fitness center. Meanwhile, outside the prison, the FBI is still having trouble finding the $2 million that was unaccounted for. It was later revealed that David threw a barrel containing the $2 million worth of cash into a nearby lake. After serving his sentence, Michael fetches Steve, and the two go to visit Kelly. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more movie recaps. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Thanks for watching.